Today I finally watched on Netflix about the Elisa Lam case, and it very eerily matched together with some really wild dreams that I've been having over the past years. And then I thought, well, you know what? I'm gonna do something on YouTube and see if anyone else has kind of tapped into this subconscious and have had maybe some similar dreams that I have had. The other night, we have a few mice that run around in the house. And so I woke up and I thought I had a little mouse under the bed running around. But I had a distinct feeling that there was a presence in the room. So I woke up with a start and then I fell back asleep. And in my dream, it was like a young lady was hiding under my bed. And you have to understand that due to the fact that I've worked as a paranormal investigator, and because when I was a little girl, technically that's what I wanted to do. I was living in an old farmhouse that had bizarre things happening in it constantly, and I was constantly having very strange things happen because I was having brushes with the paranormal, and I've just been interested in it since I was about maybe 6 or 7 years old, much to the dismay of my parents. But and I'm sure that my mom has some cool stories that I should get her on here to do some things, but I don't think I could get her to do that. She's very camera shy, unlike me. I've gotten used to being in front of the camera and with doing these YouTube things, but in the past I've always been very leery about doing interviews, and I've struggled for a very long time with depression and with all sorts of issues. And that's, I think, partly why I became so interested in this case, and it's been in the back of my mind for years, and I kept questioning, is she bipolar? And the reason why I kept wondering, was she bipolar, is because some of my loved ones are bipolar, and it just seems like, the way that if you watch the video, and I've watched it a whole bunch of times, you see how she's doing these movements with her hands and even with her head jerking a little bit. Now I take medications for the depression that I go through, so and I know when I have missed a dose, my head will do something like this because it feels like I'm getting a brain zap. It's awful. I hate it. It kind of gets me to remember, yeah, I need to take my meds. Right? But sometimes I will do something like this. And, it's been interesting because therapists years ago thought that I had a form of autism, and then some therapists would say, no, I think you have ADD. And so I have been on the gamut of all sorts of different medicines, but I've never been diagnosed as being bipolar. It's always been, this is a clinical depression. So I just wanted to get that out there so you understand what kind of depression that I'm being treated for is actually different than what Elisa Lam was being treated for. But I do know some people that have taken some medications that are the same, if not extremely similar to what she was actually taking. And so the same goes for them as well. If they miss a dose or they miss a few doses, we get jerky like this a little bit. So it looks very disjointed and a little strange. Now, with people that are bipolar, they tend to really have very strong sense of like what they're seeing is really, really there. It's total hallucination and become a little delusional and a little paranoid. But it's interesting because the people that I've talked to that are bipolar are very, very into the paranormal and quite often feel like they have some abilities when it comes to the paranormal, because the Cecil Hotel has had so many challenges with suicides, murders, so many awful things have happened there. So when you stop to think about it, it's not like like with a house, you can go through and you can do a clearing. With a hotel, you can't really go through and easily do a clearing. It's a little bit more challenging because when I do a clearing for myself or anyone else, it's important to be in the right state of mind when you do that clearing, first of all, but you also have to have doors open and windows open and have, you know, fresh air be able to come into the house and, you know, just get the whole area really flowing with the sage. And it would be almost close to impossible to do that for a hotel. And that is the kind of space that would really, I think, personally would benefit from a major clearing. Because what they want to do with it now is to actually, well, I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, but this is what they want to do with this space now, is have part of it be low income housing and the other part of it be a luxury hotel. I think personally, this is my personal opinion, I think that's a recipe for a disaster. And they should really think twice about doing that. Now, let's go back to Elisa Lam. So everyone has seen the video. I will put a link here so you can watch the video. So watch it again and watch her jerky movements. Okay. And when you watch it again, I want you to think about some of these disjointed dreams that I've had throughout the years. One was actually with a really good friend of mine. We got into an elevator. It wasn't working right, so we both ran out. And we looked up and down the hallway and we're like, okay, well, let's give it a shot. We got back into the elevator and it started going along and then it stopped, but it stopped on a floor. And so my friend got out of it and she went bucking down the hallway. And so I started to step out of the elevator and I'm looking for her and I can't find her. Where'd she go? Okay, well, I'm gonna get back on here. Oh, well, maybe I can do something to change. So I'm gonna put the whole, you know, and I was like, oh, no, I'm hitting buttons I shouldn't be hitting. And then I hit the hold button because I know from living in an apartment building for a while that if you hit the hold button, it stays open for about a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes if you're lucky. And so I go running back out and I'm looking for my friend and I don't see her. And I'm like, what's happening here? Where'd she go to, right? And I'm looking back and forth. And I get back onto the elevator and I'm like, this is really weird. And I get back out of the elevator and then I'm like, see her and we're talking. She's like, Kathy, you've got to go. And this is an old friend of mine. She's like, you've got to go. You've got to go towards the light. You're going nowhere but up. Everything's going to be fine. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, go. You got to go. You just got to go. You got to go. And I was just, and I'm like, what? What do you mean? Where? I don't get it. She's like, go. And so I actually turn and I scoot down the hallway as I'm running. And she's like, look at the light, look at the light, look at the light. And so I'm like, okay, it's a nice day. Open the window, open the window. So I open the window, and that's one segment of a dream. I know, totally weird. Okay, so another dream that I've had is climbing, and I'm climbing like an old, it's like wire, and it's rusty, and it's coming off on my hands, and it's gross, and I have I hear women's voices behind me, and come on, go, what are you, a scaredy cat? Just keep going. And so I'm climbing, just keep going, the pool's at the top, all right? So I'm climbing up, kind of trying not to look down, and then it's weird because I hear this little girl in my head saying, whatever you do, don't look down. And what do you do when someone tells you don't look down? You look down. And I look down, and I'm like, and I realize how high I am, and so I start shaking, and I'm like barely able to even like grasp onto these things, and just kind of freaking out, and then feel this hand on my back saying, come on, go, we're almost there. And so I get up into this weird area where I can see this circle, but I don't see a pool. And I'm like, there's no pool up here. I don't get it. There's no pool. And someone behind me picks up this weird, like, it's not even like a full door. It's like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like some kind of weird latchy thing kind of pops up. And she's like, the pool's in there, dummy. You can see the water. And then I'm like looking in. She's like, you have to climb down. You have to climb down. And as I start to try and maneuver my way in there, I just kind of fall into the water. And as I'm falling into the water, the thing closes. And as I'm in the water, I'm trying to like swim up, but then the water level somehow changes for some strange reason, and so I start floating back down. I'm like, okay, my shoes need to come off. So I try taking my shoes off and socks off and my jacket off, and so I'm in there and I'm cold and I'm like, right? And I'm just keep shivering, and so I'm thinking, well, do I need to try and put my coat back on? So I try to like swim back down and grab my coat and put it around me, but I'm still underwater and I can't. There are some days where I can get, it's almost like a day goes by. That's what it feels like in time, but you know, it's a dream. So obviously a day isn't going fully by, but it feels like a good bit of time where I can actually be above the water, and then it fills all the way back up again. But the weird thing in that dream is I remember like someone opening up that thing at the top, and I can see the shine of the light, and I am just sort of like, oh, the light is there, and then just sinking right back like this, and then I'm done, you know. At that point is when that dream kind of ends, and I remember quite often when I have a nightmare like this, I sit straight up like this, and I'm like, you know, and especially with this one. And it was, what was I think so strange about this one is the fact that when I woke up, this is right before I got a really bad case of pneumonia, and I couldn't breathe, and I was sitting there. I remember sitting there at my bed, and I was kind of like like freaking out. And then you know, I had to go into the hospital and have all sorts of different scans done, and I had a severe case of pneumonia. It was pretty bad. It was actually really scary for me, and I had to stay home from work for quite a while because it was so bad. But has anyone else had some weird dreams like this? Am I alone? I probably not, because I know that I have ruled this case as being accidental, and I don't think it was completely accidental. And I feel so strongly for this family. They just want answers as to why Elisa, why this happened. And I'm sure would like their daughter to be in peace, and I'm sure that they would like to be at peace themselves. And if there is someone that has contributed to this awful scenario that's happened, and, you know, that person needs to be tried. You know, that person needs to be jailed, because that is a criminal offense. To, you know, that's essentially aiding someone to die. I mean, that is murder. And no one should be allowed to get away with that. But people do need to remember that if you were to watch this, you'll see that there was a young man that had lived in the building before. He's like a death metal artist. He goes by the name Morbid. And a lot of people were actually sending him like hateful messages, because they just assumed that he's the one that did it. And in fact, he couldn't have been the one that did it, because he was actually in Mexico at the time recording. And it was a year's difference between these. At the same time, you know, they weren't there at the hotel at the same time. So it's just absolutely, you know, you need to find who could have contributed to this. And my biggest question is for the girls that she was actually rooming with before she was given her own room. Because apparently she was writing notes for them, you know, go away, leave me alone, butt out, you know, just leave me alone, you know. None of your business, that, you know, kind of, you know, all on like weird like post-it notes. So she was leaving messages like that for her previous roommates, and I would like to see, quite honestly, an interview with those previous roommates before this happened to her. And I kind of wish that there wasn't such a stigma on mental illness and depression and being bipolar or whatever kind of mental issues people have, because then it just kind of allows that to be what the determining factor is. Oh, because of the bipolar, this is what happened. Well, I mean, what if the girls that she was rooming with were saying some mean things or some nasty things, and it just, you know, contributed to her paranoia, and maybe that's part of the reason why she ended up stopping taking her meds. I mean, who knows? I know when my cousins that are bipolar, if they stop taking their meds, if they're watching, I'm so sorry that you're even going through it. I mean, I send my love to you. But it, you know, I hear these accounts of strange things that have happened. It's like, oh, if only they would stay on their meds, you know, and my heart is just like, oh, you know, I wish that something could change, so they wouldn't have to be in that kind of mental state of confusion and being paranoid and scared. And you know, it's an awful thing to watch someone that is bipolar. It really is, 'cause it totally breaks my heart. But the thing is when you're bipolar, not that I understand it from my point of view, because my depression is very different. From what I've witnessed, they become really wrapped up in these, they're almost like delusions in a way. And it's not, you know, like a delusion of grandeur of any sort. It's just, they become very focused in a very different way, that, you know, anyone else that isn't bipolar wouldn't really understand. So say someone I know that's bipolar is very, you know, so convinced that absolutely everything that they're going through is paranormal. Probably some of it could be paranormal, but then you have to also keep in mind that, you know, you need to take your meds, and when you take your meds, you don't have these things happen so much. So, you know, it's that whole, well, do I take my meds and totally, is it gonna block out all of the paranormal stuff? Do I wanna do that to myself? Or, you know, maybe there's a message for me in the paranormal, and it's just sort of like, just take your meds because I know you'll even out and you'll feel better. I mean, because I've heard accounts of shadow people for people that are bipolar. And I kind of wonder in a way if she was maybe seeing shadow people, maybe that's what was happening. Because when you actually watch the video, you can see kind of a weird shadow that's starting to form in there a little bit. So that's why I wonder about that a little bit. But watch her video again and see if you have some of the same thoughts that I do about this. But I feel like a few things are at play here, because the Cecil Hotel is so, you know, people say, you know, you go in, but you come out of there a different person. It's sort of like they're, you know, just some kind of negativity follows them after being in the Cecil Hotel. And in fact, in 1947, apparently Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia, had been in the bar at the Cecil Hotel, and the day after, she was found. And of course, what was done to her is so, you know, frightening and scary. And I've had some dreams about that as well. So I think for my next Freaky Friday, I will do a whole thing on the Black Dahlia. But today I just wanted to focus more on Elisa Lam, because I think she deserves, you know, to be at peace. Her family deserves to be at peace. And I know so many people are talking about this case, and there's so many YouTubers that have all sorts of different thoughts on this, but I would really love to hear other people's thoughts on this. So please leave a comment, hit the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks. Bye.